people of the NPL. Welcome to the Season 5 post-draft power rankings. My name is The Verd. I'm going to be one of the powering people. I would normally be joined by two people, but unfortunately, due to some technical issues that I'd rather not really go into, we're not going to be joined by Parker today. We do have his picks, though, and I'm sure, if you hit him up on Twitter and stuff, he'll let you know why he's picked certain things, but unfortunately today he won't be able to join us, but I am joined by another person who will be doing power rankings with me for the season, and that is Bob, or call me 911.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me. Indeed, I'm Bob / Common 911. I'm coach of the Cambridge Icon in the GPC, in case you're interested in me, but I can understand why you're not, because you're here for
Anyway,
the NPL Power
so
Rankings.
basically what we're going to be doing today, guys, is a bit different from, I guess, the other power rankings that you'll see this season, because on this one it's more us looking at the teams based on how we know some of these people can battle and how they've actually drafted with their teams. When it actually gets to the weeks going on, it'll be easier to see the rankings because we'll see them actually in these battles with these teams, seeing how they really function. So a lot of this is a bit of guesswork, but I guess like Bob knows his teams, knows a lot of the players more than I do, and so that'll, like, his opinions will be a little bit different from mine. I'm more focusing on the draft in itself, whereas Bob's also kind of focusing on the battler, as he's seen a lot of these guys do their thing before. So without further ado, man, should we get cracking on this? Alright, so for
Yeah, man,
me,
let's go. You can start it off if you want to.
Looking back on it, do I regret it? Not really. I stand by what I said. My bottom team for this season is the San Antonio Swampers. The main reason for it is because I'm a big fan of balance in a team. Like, I get the whole premise of hyper offense. I get that, it can be really, really effective and can be very difficult to deal with. However, I have always felt that, it is like stall, very easy in a counter team format to counter a kind of one-sided style of offense. So if you're running stall, it's very easy in a draft-based format to bring a lot of stall breakers, compared to on the ladder when maybe you can't bring a whole team of them. And it's the same thing with hyper offense. If you know your opponent basically has only like a bunch of offensive Pokemon on their team, it can be quite easy to build, try and break that. That being said, though, I do have to admit that like Landorus Incarnate, the Mega Lopunny, things like that are very, very dangerous. One thing that kind of irks me, though, is the fact that he has the Mega Lopunny and the Suicune, which are very nice, and then he's picked up the Keldeo, and I feel like if he changed Keldeo to something different, like redraft it to something else, I think it could create more balance. But then again, he does have a few Pokemon that can be run defensively, so maybe I put him a bit lower than he should have been, but that's just how I saw the team, man, honestly. We both had the Detroit Leopards and Boston Beedoops kind of low. Do you want to kind of explain why we had them quite low?
Basically, one thing about the San Antonio Swamp, he's not really high up for me either, but the biggest flaw in his team, which I kind of noticed, was because he was basically hyper offense, is that he doesn't have a lot of hazards or options to run hazards, which is kind of what bothered me. I think that's kind of hinder him in his hyper offensive playing if he does want to run it every single week. So that was the main thing about the San Antonio Swamp, that kind of made me rank him a little bit lower than most of the other teams. But yeah, the Detroit Leopards, in my opinion, he has quite a balanced team. He has a few very good months, very good options. But the biggest thing, in my opinion, what his team is about is like he has a few quad weaknesses, and I think that's going to hinder his team really like a lot. He has months like Gliscor, Celebi, Noivern, all of them, Heatran even, all of them have quad weaknesses, and yeah, in his team building, that's going to cost him. It's gonna be pretty easy for people to run coverage to hit them specifically. And to have them not be able to beat checks to certain
Alright,
rounds on
no
the
worries.
opposing side.
And then obviously when it comes to the Boston Beer, and like one thing we should also stress, guys, in this format, it's not that we're bagging on certain coaches for the teams they have. It's just that, especially in this kind of league, the teams are all very, very good, and so being put at the bottom doesn't necessarily mean we think you're light years away from the person that's on top. It's just a very tight league, a lot of very good drafts, so don't take it too bad if we put you very low. But with the Boston Beedoops, they do have a couple of really nice cores, but the one big thing for me was just a lot of typing double ups. For example, he has 3 flying types on his team, and there's also then that big dependency on Mandibuzz being the only way to get rid of hazards, when he's running a Pokemon that can have Sticky Web. So if he has a lot of rock weaknesses, and if his only way to get rid of hazards is to clear off maybe the Sticky Webs that he's planning to use, it's just very counterproductive for his team. And also, I just feel that he doesn't really have any way other than maybe the Hawlucha to really bust through an opponent's team. Like Swords Dance Landorus is okay, but in a format where almost any Pokemon can run Hidden Power Ice, it's not really ideal. So I feel like his team, it was kind of on the right track, but he could have really used a spinner instead of a defogger there to allow his webs to stay up and be a bit more consistent for his team. Oh, the other thing as well is his only stealth rocket is Landorus Therian, and I'm not a fan of always running rocks on Lando. Like it's better if you can run it a lot more versatile. So again, the hazards is another issue for these lower ranked teams. But the one kind of difference that both of us had in our bottom choices was that you put the Phoenix Sunkern at 14, and I put the Brisbane Brelooms at 13. Do you want to explain why you put the Sunkern so low?
The Phoenix Sunkern. Well, basically, I didn't dislike the draft at all. I think the draft has a few very good ones in Pure Black, Talonflame, Tyranitar, Mega Blastoise, Latias. They have a few very potent mons. But my main issue with this team is that all of his lower ranked mons, like the cheaper versions, are practically, it's not useless, but they are definitely more difficult to use. So he's probably going to be inclined to use all of the better mons, the more pricey mons each game, and basically regret drafting the lower priced mons. I think he could have definitely used a very decent higher priced mon as well in that slot, so he doesn't have to restrict him to using like one flaw in his team and one thing that might be used against him each week. Although that being said, mons like Dugtrio can definitely have an effect on the game, being a good trapper. Musharna has its viability in, for example, baton passing boosts. So it's not that they're bad picks at all. They can definitely be used, but I think it was main flaw on his team was that the lower priced mons are a lot less versatile than the higher priced ones.
No, I definitely agree.
I'm not really sure
what
what your
with a lot of people's teams
exactly.
is that they'll invest a lot into these very big high tier picks and then find that they'll be inclined to bring those picks every single week, when it's better when you look at a kind of team builder and you see that an opponent's team is stacked the whole way through. Like there's not really a low tiered mon per se. Like lowest tier maybe is say RU or NU, in the sense of like somebody maybe has like very low PU tier Pokemon. They're not exactly going to be as potent a threat as other things. So I definitely agree with you. I think he maybe, it's the same with the Swampert. It's just probably not the best use of the points. I think definitely could have spread the love a little bit more to make the team a lot more balanced. I had the this is definitely one of the bigger ones that was different from you guys. I had the Brelooms quite low. I think it was mainly because when I looked at the team, nothing really, came out at me and said, bam, look at me, I'm going to, really be a threat. Like, don't get me wrong, one of the big things I also wasn't a super big fan of is the franchising of Aerodactyl. I feel Aerodactyl could have been picked up quite easily by Pom during the draft. I feel it isn't a certain Pokemon that would get sniped. I actually have found in the past that I prefer even using Archeops over it, because Archeops is more budget, has access to like Endeavor. Although Defeater sucks, it does have its versatility as well, and I feel that he could have then maybe used the points to upgrade certain things. I'm not sure, but I do like the combination maybe of the Volt turn between Raikou and Darmanitan, but I mean his main, if really only setup sweeper, is Mega Altaria. His only real access to priority is through Sneasel, so I just find that although he has a really nice kind of balanced core, offensively speaking, nothing's really, jumping out at me saying like I'm gonna break things, because Darmanitan, a bulky water pretty much nullifies most Darmanitan sets unless you're, Zen mode or Sunny Day Solar Beam. I think it is a good team. I just feel that offensively, even with things like Raikou and Starmie, it's just not really giving me that much of a presence of like, I'm gonna be seriously worried, like, defensively trying to deal with this team. But you know what? at the end of the day, guys, the one thing about me, especially with power rankings, is I am more than happy to be proven wrong. Like, I'm more than happy to sit down and eat my humble pie at the end of making a statement. Like, I think that's kind of the thing we want, though. Like, you kind of want to be proven wrong sometimes, seeing them actually take what you've said and then say, well, I've done this, now what are you going to say, you know?
I mean, I'm always rooting for the underdog, and we are trying to boost the underdogs to prove their point against us. That's the motivation they need.
Alright,
maybe,
so that's going to do it for
at least the extra
the
motivation.
bottom four of the rankings.
If they
We're already
need
a
it at all.
quarter of the way through this bad boy. We're going to move up now to the next group of four, and I actually had the Sunkern pretty much just before the bottom four, basically for the same reasons we discussed. He has a lot of fantastic threats on his team that can definitely break teams apart, but just that lower group is just very, very underwhelming in my opinion. But you know what? He could make it work. Like, you know, Carmine, Baton Pass, Mushana into Kieran Black could be a thing. You don't know. Like, it could happen. But I mean, until that actually does happen, though, I'm not gonna, you know, put him higher on the list. I want to see good things happen from the team before I can put them higher. But let's talk about some of because we had a lot of similarities again when it came to the bottom here. So, would you like to just have a quick talk about the Sunkern's main rivals, the Phoenix Sunflora?
The Phoenix Sunflora, let me quickly check the team. Oh yes, this team. I actually really like this team from the start. Mega Mediciam, Bishop, Scolipede, and Mamoswine. Humongous threats. I really love this team, but then his dropper game became weak in my opinion. Monsters like Diancie and Flygon, Armaldo, they weren't exactly raising the standards as the previous few picks did. I really had high hopes for his team, but in my opinion, the Scolipede is like the only real threat together with the Mediciam or the Bishop. And I think it's quite easy to prepare for those things. I'm not gonna lie, I've used some of the months myself, and I felt that they need quite a bit of support, and I don't think that Riz's team, the Phoenix Sunflora, actually gives that support. I'm not really sure how you feel about it, but that's mainly my biggest issue with his team, and I think he would be kind of underwhelming despite his big threats.
The reason why this one's a bit higher than some of the other ones was that he does have some elements of a more defensive thing to it. Like, Diancie probably isn't the best defensive Pokemon, not gonna lie, since his best switch into a ground type move is either the Flygon or the Tornado Therian, both of which don't really appreciate things like ice coverage or, you know, just other things in general. I think though the big thing for me, like you said, it's that, you know, he had the really good startings of a fantastic offensive team, and I think some of the things that kind of let him down, I don't mind Diancie. I think, you know, if you know how to use Diancie, it's pretty solid for a team. And I think, you know, paired with the Moongus and Jellicent, I can kind of maybe see it working. And I actually kind of like the budget pick of Flygon because it does allow him that defog option if he doesn't want to use Armaldo, and he can U-turn around. But I think just defensively speaking, though, the combination of a Moongus, Diancie, and Jellicent, it's not really enough. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really enough for a defensive core to say, yeah, you know, we've got half of our Fire, Water, Grass core here. There's no Fire type, which even defensively is actually a really nice typing to have, because otherwise, you know, opposing Fire types can actually break through Water types quite easily. I mean, you look at things like Emboar or Entei that can get access to not only electric moves, but running the special attacking sets with Solar Beam, so actually having your own Fire type there can be really solid defensively for a team. And I think he's missing a few of those important cores. He kind of has the Fairy Dragon Steel core, but again, Diancie is very dicey. The fact that Diancie is actually more points than Flygon is very surprising to me in this form. But maybe we're missing something with Diancie. Maybe it's good, but I just think defensively speaking, it's a bit shaky and can be broken down quite easily.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Diancie has a few good options it can run. It can definitely surprise and catch people off guard, but
I think Trick Room could be good.
Yeah.
Trick Room could be a really cheeky set, or even just the normal Gem Explosion can be quite good for maybe setting up the hazards and then exploding on, say, a Donphan or something that comes in to prevent the easy spin. That could be an option.
Well, he can be a very supportive mon, and it can definitely do work. So I'm not going to discredit Diancie just yet. The combination.
Oh, the other big. Yeah, sorry, you go.
combination of
Sorry, I interrupted
is
you.
just not enough in my opinion. I think it will, it might be rather easy to prepare for the more defensive team on Race's end, and I think that will kind of cost him. Yeah, I think it will.
Oh, the other big thing I just wanted to point out was I think he has like 4 times weaknesses, and I'm not a super big fan of 4 times weaknesses.
Yeah,
Like it's
true.
very easy to prep for.
Yeah.
Anyway, we move on. So another team that we all have here together is the New York Matangs, which obviously is I literally just lost it on the page. There it is. It's Razor's team. Now, one thing that I really like about this is I really like the defensive core. It's like the first team that's really come along right now where it's not just about that offense. It's more that he's gone with a really solid defensive core. But it's almost the flip side of every team we've seen so far because he has a really nice defensive core, but offensively speaking, other than Thunderous Therian, I'm not really seeing something that's sticking out to me saying, yeah, this thing's gonna be, tough to do. Like Azumarill is great, don't get me wrong. In a draft format, it can be very, very good, but also in a draft format, it can be quite easy to deal with. It actually has quite a slow speed, especially in this kind of format where things like most of your standard grass types actually outspeed Azu and can deal with it quite well. Thunderous is really going to struggle to be able to double dance with the amount of coverage moves teams can get, and the fact that most teams are going to be running some kind of electric type to nullify running just the Thunderbolt and say the Hidden Barrel Ice combination. And picks such as Licky Licky, Regigigas, and Octillery, I feel like even just Regigigas and Octillery, combine those two together into a 6-point Pokemon instead of taking two Pokemon that I feel like Octillery, don't get me wrong, it does have an amazing moveset. It is a fantastic moveset, but I feel it doesn't really benefit his team that much. I feel like, Azu, Blaziken, and Thundurus are his only big threats, and they're only really big threats if they can set up. And that, to me, is a bit of a worry for his team. But do you have anything you want to say about it?
I completely agree. His team is basically completely about bulk and about team synergy, at least typing synergy. But yeah, again, his offense is a bit lacking. And if he wants to run offensive mons, he kind of needs support from more offensive mons, which he doesn't have. So I think that is gonna hinder him. Although I wouldn't be surprised if he runs like Hippowdon offensively for some reason or Ferrothorn offensively, because that does allow this draft. So I think that is kind of a good part of his team. And he has the biggest threat, in my opinion, in the format, and it's actually the priciest month in Megalatias. So I think that will actually be able to cover a lot of his weaknesses as well.
Oh, I definitely agree. Mega Latias is so annoying. Just that Carmine Store power set, like, even if you have a Dark type Pokemon, you can just tech on HP Fighting so easily.
Yep.
And it's just a very, very annoying thing to do. The bulk is just stupid. It's like giving it Soul Dew, pretty much, with the Mega Evolution. It's really dumb.
Yeah,
But anyway, we should move on. So the last team that we've kind of all got together in that little bit of space is the Florida Feraligators. Now, it's a pretty good team when you think about it with Hooper and Barnacle Fable, but do you see some of the kind of holes that this team has in there, Bob?
It's difficult. I mean, I like this team. He does have like a good synergy. He does have a few good months. Although I don't really see the strong win condition, the strong one that can just pull through for him. I don't see. Yeah, it might be me. That's all in my opinion, of course. But I don't see the powerhouse that is his win condition each week, or the mon that's gonna do it for him. I think he has a lot of decent mons in Mega Manectric, Superior. Those are all mons that can definitely clean up. But I don't see the core of the draft, the mon that the draft is built around. I don't see that. I mean, I'm not sure if you agree with me on that, but
Oh, I definitely agree. I think the one thing that he's missing is a dragon. He has that fairy, he has that steel. It's really nice, but there's just no dragon. And a lot of the times you'll find a lot of the dragons in the format can be that quintessential win con. Even like a Flygon, for example. Running that thing Choice Scarf late game to clean through teams is nice, because right now what it's looking like his late game cleaner is either a Superior or a Diggersby. And the Diggersby is probably going to have to be like banded to just spam quick attack, or Superior is just going to be leaf storming through. Like maybe Agility Diggersby can make things work, but
yeah,
you're definitely right. He's going to be like forced to run something Scarf to be the cleaner, whereas it's better having just that really strong finishing Pokemon. And also, like, I think his only form of priority on his team is that quick attack from Diggersby. Don't get me wrong, I think the combination of Hooper Unbound and Clefable is great, but the other big thing that worries me is looking at his team. He looks like he has a little bit of an issue. I feel against I just feel like Steel plus Flying as a combination, because
Yeah.
you look at like most of the Steel types can deal with Clef, even though it has Fire Blast. A lot of the bulky Steel types don't even care. It can also deal with Scarm, Serp, and all that. And then when you have that Flying type added in, or the Levitator, it shuts down Diggersby's Earthquake, Gastrodon going for the Earth Power, or even Regirock. So I think there's a lot of good, solid Pokemon in the team, but you're right, there's just no focal point. Like, there's nothing really that's going in and saying, yeah, here I am.
It's basically the Dragon type that's missing, as in the coverage as well, the Steel Eater coverage. Dragon types can shut it down more easily than the rest of his team can, so I think he needs to pick up a scary dragon, which he can use as a win condition, he can use creatively, and I think that's what he's missing right now.
And like, it doesn't really need to be like one of the big dragons. It doesn't have to be like a Kyurem or, a Zardex or whatever. It can be something even like a Druddigon, because Druddigon with sheer force is pretty terrifying for a team to actually have to deal with. So it's more just the impact that a dragon can have is what we're mentioning here, guys. It's not saying, oh, get a dragon type and you'll be fine. It's using the dragon type in the way that can really benefit his team. But anyway,
Yep.
let's move on, because we all now have one team that we have separately kind of chosen different in this group. So for you, yours was the Los Angeles Nidokings, obviously Dan's team. So would you like to talk about his team for a little bit?
Yeah, Dance's team. First looking at his team, I see a lot of UU picks, and obviously that's not a bad thing about the draft, because he has the most potent UU picks in the game. In the league from it, they're probably going to be OU picks, by the way. Monsters like Crocodile, monsters like Hexerus, Cobalion, Crobat, Reuniclus, Mega Aggron, all amazing, definitely amazing. But I do think that the OU monsters, the very pricey OU monsters, can make a difference in a draft, and I think that is what he's missing right now. He misses that. I'm not really sure how to name it, because he does have a few monsters that can definitely pull through, like Hexerus is a humongous threat, but he misses that scare factor. I think he has a lot of support monsters for a threat that's non-existent on his team. And that's my main problem with his team. Other than that, I do definitely like his draft. His monsters are fantastic, his support is great, and the typings and his synergy is amazing as well. He has a lot of good threats, and I do like his team, but unless he has that one win condition or that one team idea, I don't think he will be the first at the end of the season. But hopefully he will prove me wrong. I'm not really sure if you want to give your opinion just yet about his team, but
I think I might just save it a little bit later on, because I mean the only thing really I'm just going to mention is when you talk about he doesn't really have, I think it's almost like an X factor, I guess you can call it that, where it's that kind of OU factor of having a certain Pokemon. Like you look at the Swamperts next to them, and you see things like Mega Lopunny, Landorus Eye, even Keldeo, for that matter. And then you look at the Breylooms next to him, and you have like Mega Altaria, Starmie, Raikou. I think for him, what that is the Volcanion. Like, it's just, that thing, although it is slow, is a very hard Pokemon to wall in this format, and it's going to be able to hit hard. But
definitely, yeah.
There are a few, I can understand what you mean, where there is a good depth, but there isn't that kind of upper echelon of hard hitters and big threats that would maybe scare people more when it comes to the team building process for his team. But anyway, I will quickly have a good little talk about... Oh no, I think I've talked about mine.
You have the Sydney.
I think mine was the Sunkern. Yeah, I already talked about Sunkern. So we can move on. We're halfway through this little good old-fashioned chatteroony. The ones in the future will probably be a bit shorter, guys, just because we'll be more focusing not on the teams and more the people as battlers and how they went in their matches. So I think that'll be a lot easier to just kind of discuss that through.
Yeah.
But for now, we're going to go into the top 8. And again, we have a lot of similarities here in the top 8. The first similarity I can see right off the bat is the Jersey Dwebbles. And I wouldn't mind talking about them, because I've actually battled with Cloud before in the PMC. We were both semi-finalists in that league, and one thing I noticed about his playstyle is he didn't exactly draft the most threatening team overall, but the way that he was able to build with it and battle with it made it seem more threatening than it was. Now, the team that he has here, I do like it. I think there is definitely a good sense of balance. It's more of an offensive balance though, because obviously you have maybe things like Kofagrigus, Rotom Wash, and I guess Kyurem and Sizzle to an extent that can be defensive, but it's mainly Rotom Wash and Kofagrigus. I'd say that it'd be, your dedicated walls on that team. Maybe Shaman and Sandslash, but again, they're kind of those ones where they're not. It's a role they can do, not what they're normally expected to be compared to, like, say, your Rotom and your Kofagrigus. So the Mega T-type pick, I don't mind. I think it's actually, looking at the price of a lot of other Megas, it seems pretty budget for the fact that it has, I think, like base 160 attack, access to Dragon Dance, great dual stab. It can be very, very annoying to deal with. The one issue for me, I feel though, like I said, is that he has a lot of makeshift defensive Pokemon that can definitely throw out the balance of his team a little bit. I think sometimes it's good to have, say, dedicated walls, like you were talking about with Razor's team, how he has the Hippo, which obviously could be a wall, but then you have that surprise factor when it goes from a wall to being an attacker. Whereas with the Jersey's Werewolves, like, we've seen offensive Kofagrigus before, we've seen offensive Rotom before, and I just feel that there isn't going to be as much of a surprise factor. Like, everything here on this team can be offensive and defensive, which is great in one hand because obviously unpredictability is fantastic, but it's also bad on the other hand because sometimes in some situations you really require that solid, strong, dedicated wall to be able to deal with a threat. And that's what I fear for him, is that he's going to go up against those big threats and he's not going to have the most optimal switch-ins to them. But you know what? I'm hoping to see Mega T-Tar put in work, but I honestly feel like, Sandslash is going to get more kills than Mega T-Tar this season, just because I feel Mega T-Tar, that 4x weakness. The same with Sizzle. Again, it's just a team with a couple of 4x weaknesses that aren't super easily mitigated, but I mean, what do you think, man? I've been rambling too long about this team.
Well, to be fair, the Mega Tyranitar pick, I've faced Mega Tyranitar a few times, and I've never been able to OHKO it, so I definitely it's a humongous threat to each team, and I think a lot of people will underestimate it, to be fair. However, I do kind of agree with you as well, although I like his team, as I do think the offense, the full turn combinations into the wall breakers, or even the cheeky Kofagrigus with the Nasty Plot and the Trick Room, all of them, I can definitely see the combinations do work. The only thing why I put the Jersey Dwellers below a few of the other members of the NPL is because I think their drafts are just better. I think right now is the point where their drafts are becoming incredibly good. However, you have to put one of them below the other, and for me that's Jersey Dwellers.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It is getting to that stage where it's trying to pick out like the tiniest things to separate them, because again, a lot of these guys, like especially for me, I haven't really seen them battle that much, and so I'm very curious to see how they go in the battles, and it'll definitely shift my picks a lot. So it's more focusing on the draft, but I guess with Cloud, he was the only one that I actually legitimately really seen battle and had first-hand battling him, so I feel confident in that team that he'll be able to do the appropriate things to make it work. But anyway, let's move on and let's discuss the Arizona Carvanas and Toge. What do you feel about his team?
He has got a disgusting core of Jirachi and Togekiss. That's the Flint score is incredibly good, but I hate it. I absolutely hate it. But props to him for drafting it because it's a good combination, especially with the Hydreigon and the Garchomp making the fire, making the Fairy Dragon still complete. Other than that, he has a few decent threats, to be honest. Breloom, Snorlax, Mega Pidgeot, they're all pretty cool mons and can actually do a lot of things for his team. He does, in my opinion, have a few weaknesses. Rocks being one, he doesn't have a lot of... at least Jirachi and Garchomp usually prefer being different roles than Stealth Rockers. I mean, they do it well, but he could have used another Stealth Rocker to ease their movestats up a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. He has a few threats, he has a few good mons, but I can definitely see some of them underperforming as well. He had Mega Pidgeot. It's kind of untouched in the league format, I want to say. It has been used a few times, but never has it, I think at least. I'm not sure if you can confirm it or not, but I've never seen it used.
I drafted it late in the season, and I didn't even bring it to a match because it sometimes just never matches up well in a
Yeah.
matchup. Like,
I think that a Mega Pidgeot is some of them. It's one of those months where you don't really know what to expect from it just yet. We'll see in the season how it does, but for now, I do definitely like Steam, mainly because of the incredible synergy and incredible offensive synergy, mainly with the Jirachi and Togekiss, which are very, very good and viable. And yeah,
my main issues with the team, one of the first ones is he's doubled up a lot on typings. He has a couple of water types in Blastos and Frogadier. He has 2 dragon types in Hydreigon and Garchomp. And one of the big factors for me as well is that his only electric immunity is 4 times weak to a move, which I always find to be really scary. You know, having to switch in a Garchomp to take an electric hit per se, and then being absolutely rocked by an HP Ice, because there are a lot of dangerous electric types that we've already discussed in this league, and so it's just I don't feel it's a good answer to an electric type Pokemon. I feel like if you're gonna have a ground immunity or an electric immunity, it should be an immunity that is not 4 times weak to something. Like, classic example is the Landos. I don't like them being the quintessential answer to a ground type move when a hidden power ice could just be packed onto a Pokemon, especially in this format when it's a lot easier to prep for. I just feel that it's not going to be a consistent stop to those electric types. I think it is going to be a very good offensive pick, but like you said, basically having either Garchomp or Jirachi run rocks means that Garchomp is going to be hemmed down to either being that defensive Rocky Helmet set, or maybe Jirachi is going to be that Spadef Wish set. Is not really too sure yet. I think the team is very, very strong offensively, but again, on the defensive side, it's a little bit. It's again like the same thing with Cloud's team. It's a lot of Pokemon that can go both ways, but they go so much better as offensive threats than defensive walls. That's just the thing. Oh, pardon me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the main thing which I did forget to mention is that he doesn't really have the best switch-ins to certain types. I noticed the fighting type, the only really resistant fighting type is Togekiss. So I do think that the switch-ins wise, he might have a little bit of a problem, but if he takes his approach offensively, then he might be able to avoid losing to just spamming fighting moves or spamming electric type moves.
Another thing he won't really like is switching in on dark type Pokemon, especially if he's trying to bring in something like Togekiss, which doesn't appreciate coming in on maybe rocks initially and then taking the knockoff damage. It's not going to be super great for its longevity, so that is another issue for his team. But we need to move on and keep this ball rolling. So the last team that we actually had in common here in the no, we didn't have it in common. I thought we did, but we didn't. We can still talk about it though. And that is the Toronto Staraptors. So this is obviously Jolt's team, which obviously he was grand finalist last year and probably would have won if Hax wasn't a glorious element of Pokemon. So I don't know, his team this season, it's not what I was expecting. Like, I had him pretty high. Like, I've got him a bit higher than you do, but I'll kind of talk about why I have him a bit higher a bit later on. But why do you feel he's a little bit lower than the top 4?
I like his draft. He has a few very decent months. Victini, Sylveon, Venusaur core is amazing. Pair that with Empoleon and Salamence, that's already a very, very good team on its own. But I really did this draft I immediately thought, okay, even if there wasn't the Toronto Raptors name above the draft, I knew for a fact that this was a Jolt draft. He has a few months that are not regularly used in the draft and still are great threats. I mean, Cloister, I've never seen it used in the draft before, and I'm definitely excited to see how Jolt's going to use it, because that might definitely affect his viability. And yeah, like last season he had a Wobbuffet, and this season he has a Ditto. I mean, immediately that's going to be Jolt draft that he will have very, very good. He does have a very good approach with those months, and he knows how to play with them. So I think his use for his months will be better than his team itself is. Although his team is very good as well. I mean, he has the threats for Victini, Sylveon, Venusaur, like I said. Those are the months that they're definitely reliable and pretty easy to use, I want to say. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of thought put into those months to use them. And he has Azel, which I really like in his team. I think it's a humongous threat that will be often overlooked, and I definitely hope that it's gonna do a lot for his team.
Nah, definitely. I think definitely Ditto is a Pokemon that people kind of forget about. That it's actually amazing in this format. Being able to counter any setup sweeper that your opponent has and basically be able to turn it against them is a really strong tool, and definitely what it provides him with as well is a huge factor in the team building process when his opponents are considering bringing a setup sweeper and then realizing, oh, there's a Ditto, maybe I shouldn't do it, or I need to bring certain Pokemon that can basically support me in case my own Pokemon is used against me. So it just adds an extra level of complexity to Jolt's team for sure. But I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But I do want to discuss quickly the Sydney Sharpedos, because I actually had them as 8th for me, which is pretty low. But again, my reason for that is the same reason that you said earlier. It's the teams are all very similar at this point. We feel like they're all about on the same level, and so it's not necessarily that I feel that it is this low. It's just me more nitpicking than anything. I think that Gypsy has an incredibly strong team. I think, you know, two amazing priority users in Weavile and Megapincer. Not even to mention he has priority in Metagross and Emboar. So priority, he's got that stacked. That's definitely a big thing that he has on his team. He has the Zapdos, which is a fantastic defogger on his side as well. One of the big things though that I was kind of looking at is his only two ways of setting up Stealth Rock is with a Stunfisk, which is a great pick, don't get me wrong, but I feel in this format can be easily exploited. I feel that there's a lot of types that match up quite well against Stunfisk, the main one of those being grass types. A lot of grass types can come in quite well, especially the grass poison types, which can also easily bypass the toxic that Stunfisk may want to carry. And then that means that if he's not running rocks on Stunfisk, it's either on Mew, which I'm not really... I hate running rocks or defog on Mew. I think it's not something you want to do. If you have a Mew on your team, the aim is to use it as versatile as possible, which means... Oh, I forgot about Miltank. Disregard all that I've said about Stealth Rocks, guys. I completely forgot Miltank was on his team.
He's got 5 Stealth Rocks.
He has many rockers. Yeah, he's got so many Stealth Rock users. I was like, ugh. It's late at night for me. Don't... But offensively speaking, his team is amazing. Like, you know, I am a huge fan of Emboar. I've used it in a lot of seasons in the past, and it's always a Pokemon that I would rather draft than have to face, because there's a lot of lack of walls to deal with it. It has very nice coverage, and with that reckless ability, it hits like a truck. He has so many big offensive issues. The main thing for me, again, is defensively speaking. I have used a Lomomola. I picked it up like late in a season, brought it to 4 matches, it got 8 kills, which is great. But when I got to the semi-finals, I went up against a person who knew how to actually play against a Lomomola, and it's quite easily, you know, to just bring a substitute Pokemon, and a Lomomola gets shut down so quickly. It doesn't really have huge wall breaking potential. It's, you know, cheeky with the Mirror Coat and it has knockoff and that, but set up a sub and a Lomomola can be pretty easily neutralized, as I discovered the very hard way against the Sylveon. I also feel that, again, he has a few 4x weaknesses. Mega Pinsir to Rocks is just really bad because it forces Zapdos or Mew to have that defog to support it. And I'm not like, if Mew's not running the defog, then Zapdos is taking a big chunk every time it comes in to try and get rid of hazards, or Mega Pinsir is taking a big chunk. Also, the Weavile being 4x weak to fighting can be a bit detrimental, but overall I do feel like it's definitely a top 8 team. It's very good. I just feel that there's a lot of issues, and there's a big underlying premise to have hazard removal every week. Like, you can't run an offensive Zapdos without maybe bringing a defog Mew, or vice versa. I feel like one of them has to be there to kind of deal with the hazards, because he doesn't have a way to spike stack, so he can't really force his opponent to defog the hazards away. So I guess that's a bit of a flaw in my opinion, but again, I'm happy to be proven wrong. It's more just, again, like we said, it's just nitpicking. It really is just mindless nitpicking. Is there any teams that we haven't... Oh yeah, so to finish this off, obviously I have the Austin Toros at number 6, but you have the Brisbane Breloons at number 5. Do you want to talk about the Braylon team, because I had them quite low
Yeah.
for this draft.
I mean,
For this
I
ranking.
did agree with what you said. The main issue on his team was the lack of priority for me. Only Sneasel being the priority, and it's not often. Well, it's a good mon to bring, to be fair. It's not for an NFE mon. It's definitely one of the better ones. But I like this draft, to be fair. Mega Altaria, Stormy, Raikou. In my opinion, a few of the biggest threats in the tier in the league, in the format, and paired with their Manitan with the U-turn and the full turn combination. In my opinion, pretty insane. And he has a few very good mons in Cresselia as well, which can be just win conditions, putting the pressure on the opponent. And I think that's kind of what makes he has just those powerful mons that just force so many preparations for the opposing team, which I think that will make him make him more easy for himself to build his team, knowing that the opponent has to prepare for those big threats. The kind of thing that I didn't really like in his team was the quad weaknesses of Chestnut and Rhyperior being more of the defensive ones in his team, as I do think that is quite easy to bypass them and take them out before they actually do a lot of things themselves. But that's the main issue. But other than that, I do definitely like his team, and I think he has a few powerhouses that can use him very offensively or even defensively as well in some forms.
Yeah, for sure. No, I do think it is a very good team, and again, like we keep on saying, guys, a lot of these teams are all very, very good. So it's almost like splitting hairs sometimes when you're trying to figure out where to rank people at this point. I think once the battles actually happen, you'll see a bit more clear cut where we really feel these teams overall will lie, and that's case in point. Like my number 6 for the post draft was the Austin Taurus, which I know both you and Parker have ranked a lot higher. I think for me, again, it's just nitpicking. I'm fully aware that Rob has a very, very good team, and I've been recently watching a lot of his battles. Unfortunately, I watched the semi-final of the GPC against you. Commiserations for that one. But I can see, obviously, he is a very good battler. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to draft a very solid team, and this team is no different. Like, there isn't really any major holes that I can see like straight away. Like, you kind of have to. It's one of those teams where, like, compared to the ones we've seen further down in the draft, where like, oh yeah, there's this problem, this problem, this problem, I can see them straight away. With these ones, like, you have to dig a little bit deeper to kind of understand what the big issues are. So the things that I like. Let's just start with that. The balance is phenomenal. Mega Sizzle Latios is a really underrated combo. He also then has things like Arcanine, Seismitoad, and the Nidoqueen, which can break through those steel types that Latios and Mega Sizzle aren't super big fans of. He has so many switch-ins to fire types that Sizzle doesn't really need to feel threatened that often. I'm still not like a super big fan of Mega Sizzle in the format. I just feel that, you know, with that 4 times weakness, although you can run the bulk to deal with it, it's just a constant issue that is there that I find it's just really annoying when it comes to team building. But he does have the Flash Fire Arcanine, so definitely helps him out there. I think the main thing that I guess I'm a bit, I mean, see, everything kind of works all together, because you think about, like, he has the rocks on, say, either Nidoqueen or Seismitoad. So they're the 2 options. That's a little bit like iffy, because obviously if he wants to run a bit more of an offensive Life Orb Nidoqueen, then he's probably going to have to ditch the rocks on that and then bring the Seismitoad. But he could run the Life Orb with rocks. It just could waste a turn where he could be breaking through walls. The really good thing though is he has like the Braviary in the back, so if there is a Defog Mon, he can come in and deal with that. But the other kind of big issue I feel is he's planned really well for something with Defog, with the sticky webs and whatnot. But he has a lack of a Ghost type, and because of that, it is quite easy for opponents that have a Rapid Spinner, which the majority of teams do, to just be able to quite safely Rapid Spin away those hazards. So it's good that he has that way of blocking out the Defog, because Defog is quite a common form of hazard removal. But especially with the sticky webs, you want to be forcing your opponent into that situation where I need to get them off, so I need to risk, you know, him having the Braviary come in and go for the Defog, compared to a situation of saying, oh yeah, I don't have a Ghost type, but, you know, if he spins, I'm going to try and take advantage. It's just not the same thing. You want to try and force them into that hole, and I feel that Rob's drafted really well, but not having that Ghost type, I think it just gives his opponents a bit of an exit strategy when it comes to the hazards that he can lay down. But other than that, I think the team is incredibly solid. I probably could have ranked it higher, but as we've been saying all this time, it's very hard to separate a lot of these teams. But I know you'll definitely have more to say about the Austin Toros when we get to it, because as you guys should see on the screen now, you can see the top 4 that we have. So I'll just quickly, super quick, just finish off what I was saying about Jolt earlier. Obviously, Victini, Sylveon, Mega Venusaur, can't really go wrong with that. We're not going to talk about Nose Pass or Pass. Actually, Pass 1's alright, but we're not going to talk about Nose Pass. I think that was just a kind of cheeky pick. I also really like the pick of Lucario. I think in this format, it is very underrated. One of the rare Pokemon that can set up not only a Swords Dance, but a Nasty Plot, and still be incredibly difficult to deal with either way. I think Empoleon is really underrated as a Pokemon in this format, especially paired with things like the Mega Venusaur and the Sylveon. I feel that also having the Define ability means that it can come in on the Lati Twins and get a +2 boost, and then have things like Knock Off, which makes it a seriously potent threat. Subpatire is still such a good thing. Cloyster, again, it's scary. Like, you're going to have to bring like your bulky Water type, your bulky Steel type to be able to deal with it, which is pretty much fodder for your Mega Venusaur or your Victini. So it helps out the other members of his team really well, complements them fantastically. Like you said, Azelf is such a dangerous Pokemon. People are always focusing on things like Mew and Jirachi and whatnot, but they kind of forget that Azelf is incredibly fast and has such a diverse move pool that it can be a really, really hard Pokemon to deal with. But overall, I think he has a very good team. I feel it's a top 4 team because I know that he is a top 4 battler, and I think he's going to prove that again this season.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, now that we're into the top 4, I think feel free to have a nice long chat about those Sydney Sharpedos and what you think of them.
Well, basically, the coach of the Sydney Sharpedos is Gypsy King. I've watched his recent battles, and I have to admit he's an incredible player. He's fantastic with the months he drafts, and the team that he drafts, he has so many options with them. Defensively, offensively, coverage-wise, the versatility is just there, and I know for a fact that versatility is the hardest thing to prepare against, because you don't know what someone is going to bring. You can't say you can guarantee something, so you can't make specific team building to that. You have to team build for all the most likely situations. And I know for a fact that Gypsy is going to be able to complement him for himself in the team building and make sure that he can come out on top in the end. And he has the threats to work with it as well. Weavile, Mega Pinsir, Metagross, they're all very hard-hitting mons. And like you said, the Emboar as well as a very good wall breaker. And I know, like I said, mainly because I watched his videos, mainly because I know how he battles, that he knows how to play with those mons. He knows how to double enter mons. He knows how to make win conditions work. And I can see him losing to a lesser rated team, to be honest. I don't think the matchup will almost always be in his advantage, in my opinion, because he has just that big pressure of mons, that big pressure of the typings, the hard-hitting mons, and the potential setup. And the only thing that what you mentioned is with the hazard removal in Zapdos and Mew. He kind of has to bring hazard removal on one of them. Although on Zapdos it doesn't hinder him a lot, he would probably prefer to run a different Zapdos set from time to time to just get the opponent off guard. But that could, of course, work in his advantage, because maybe people will be expecting the defog on Zapdos, and then he will surprise them with, for example, agility, baton pass Zapdos, or something along those lines. But yeah, we'll have to see how he does that. But in my opinion, the Sydney Sharpedos have a fantastic team, a lot of threats, a lot of options to win the games, and a lot of options to stop the opponent from winning the games. And that's what I like about the team. And yeah, the only thing that I personally dislike about the team is the Alamamola again. I think he might be facing a lot of substitute setup mons. But that might also work for him if he doesn't bring Alamamola. He has forced the opposing team to prepare for the Alamamola in some way, so yeah.
And sometimes actually the Alamamola can be good though in that sense, because if you're forcing your opponent to say, oh, he's got a Alamamola, I'm going to bring something with sub, it can actually really nullify certain threats. So for example, you look at Sylveon. If Sylveon's running sub, then it means that he's probably not going to bring the choice spec set, which means that Metagross actually has a better matchup against it, being able to come in a lot safer, not having to worry about, say, like a spec Shadow Ball a lot of the time, because the Alomomola is there in the back, being able to take it quite well and retaliate. So there is that sense of it, but there is also that really bad sense of, certain Pokemon that can set up substitutes can be quite scary, especially looking at his team. Say if something like Hooper Unbound, if he went up against that and set up a sub against his team, that would be pretty darn scary. There is not a lot of things on his team that want to try and break that Hooper Unbound sub and then live to tell the tale. But again, it's a hypothetical. I don't even know if they play each other this season. So
I don't.
Anyway,
Maybe in the finals.
we'll just quickly, could happen. It was just an example of a Pokemon, to be fair. But we're gonna move on to, I think, the only team that we both actually have in the exact same position in our entire power ranking.
Yeah.
My lord. Which is the Atlanta Braviary. So obviously Trev won totally fair and square to win the championship last season. And
Totally.
I think when I saw his first 3 picks I was like, okay, this is looking like a really good draft. Like, franchising Excadrill was a great start. Getting Manaphy was even better. And then getting Mega Latios was like just the cream on top. Like, those 3 just as an offensive core is terrifying. Manaphy doesn't really appreciate grass types or some of the other bulky types that actually Mega Latios deals with quite effectively. Like, Manaphy with a dragon type is a really solid combination in any draft and has the ability to just tear sorry, lost my voice there for a second. Tear teams apart. And then couple that fact in with the fact that Excadrill itself not only is a clinic, but can also be a very powerful wall breaker. People forget that. I think it has like base 130 attacks, so even slapping like a Choice Band or a Life Orb on it, it can rip through a lot of the walls that would be detrimental to Manaphy. Being some bulky electrics that maybe Mega Latios doesn't want to deal with, say like your Mega Ampharos. Not saying Mega Ampharos is here, it's more just talking about drafting this team in general. I also really like the Terrakion pick. I really started liking Terrakion more again in the draft format when I saw Shardy using it in March Madness, because it wasn't just about, the classic Terrakion sets. There's so many different ways that you can run it, and I think people that feel that it's one-dimensional are going to be the people that get destroyed by it, because I think Trev will know the versatility that Terrakion holds, and same with things like Entei and even Porygon 2. The only things I was a bit concerned about was, again, looking at maybe his lower tier picks. So for example, I feel that because he has a Manaphy, that may hinder him using Sharpedo a bit. I feel that Sharpedo is nice, don't get me wrong, Speed Boost is great, with a Life Orb it can hit very hard, but I think compared to the damage output that a Manaphy can get on a team, and the fact that it's a more reliable water type for the team, is definitely going to be a bit detrimental. Same thing, I guess, with Fletchinder compared to Entei. Fletchinder could be really good in some situations, running no item, trying to set up, but Entei is just such a powerful fire type for his team, so I feel like those 2 later picks, he kind of doubled up on typings he didn't really need to do. Maybe could have invested in perhaps a ghost type, even changing Fletchinder to something like oh no, he has Gorgeist. I keep forgetting these things. Like, I look straight past them. I didn't even see it between Aromatisse and Sharpedo. But like, what I mean is that he's doubled up on a few typings he doesn't really need. Like, they don't really affect his team that much. It doesn't really change too much. He still has an incredibly solid team, but I feel like he didn't need to take them, and I feel like they're not going to be used that much in this season. But I still think he has a phenomenal team. Just the fact that he has the Manaphy, the Mega Latios, and the Drill, a defensive core of P2, Aromatisse, and Gorgeist is actually very, very solid. Mix that in with also the fact that Manaphy can be quite defensive. Even Mega Latios can be quite good with the bulk and Drill to that extent. So I think there's a very nice balance. More offensive than defensive, but a few double up typings have him definitely in my top 3, but not top 2.
I think you definitely said everything that I wanted to say as well. Like, first of all, the first 3 picks, I was just mind blown. How the fuck is he able to get all 3 of those? I was questioning everyone's sanity at that point, but yeah, he managed to do it, and this draft is insane. It's powerful as fuck. But he, like you said, he does have a few low tier picks that might not always be brought to the game. Although I don't really think it's gonna weaken his draft. I think that Sharpedo actually is a really good pick, and hopefully he's gonna use it well in this season. But I don't think Sharpedo is necessarily going to hinder his usability in his team. For Fletchinder, probably, but that's mainly because Sharpedo can be is more easily, in my opinion, a win condition than Fletchinder is, as Fletchinder does rely on getting a sword stance up, which is not always possible because of its lack of its bulk, as it cannot carry the Eviolite unless he wants to be Eviolite with sword stance and acrobatics, but then the acrobatic does a lot less damage. So I do think that Fletchinder is not always going to be brought to the games, maybe not even once, I'm not really sure. But the Sharpedo, I do actually have high hopes for Sharpedo, and it might actually be the overlooked one because he has Manaphy on his team, which is what I think might be the hidden surprise for the hidden MVP for the Atlanta Braviaries, perhaps. But yeah, everything apart from that, I don't think I have anything new to add to what you said.
The only other thing I was going to add is one big thing that we look at when it comes to drafting, obviously, is having very reliable ground immunity, being able to just nullify ground types. Like, it's all well and good to have a ground resist like Gorgeist, but a lot of ground types are going to have access to knockoff, so it's not exactly the best counter. And one thing that does worry me is that the Fletchinder, which is one of his two his ground immunities, is 4 times weak to things like Stone Edge, which is so easy to tack on a lot of your ground types that you'll see, which means that if, like you say, he's not going to bring Fletchinder a lot, there is a lot of pressure on Mega Latios or Gorgeist to be there week in, week out, being able to deal with a lot of these ground types. So I could see maybe ground type Pokemon being a little bit of an issue for Trev's team. It does seem a little bit ground type weak, but he might be able to deal with that. We'll have to wait and see.
Gorgeist and Megalites are pretty reliable, so I don't think, in my opinion, it's probably not going to be an issue, but who knows? It might be. We'll have to see how the games get played, and hopefully do this again next week. But yeah, on to the next two teams.
That's true. Yeah, we're down to the final 2. Alright, so at number 2, probably I put him really high just because I looked at the team and I think the 2 top teams for me are probably the 2, in my opinion, most balanced teams. They're maybe not the like, don't get me wrong, I think like Rob and Palm and all that, they have very, very balanced teams. But I think these were balanced teams where I couldn't necessarily string away major flaws. Like, I could pick out little minor flaws and say, oh, like, this could be an issue, maybe you could change that. But it wasn't as bad as saying, like, he needs this to do this certain role every time. The only big issue that I felt with this team was that there is a major double up on typings with Cobalion, with the fact that he has Mega Aggron and Hitmonlee already that can pretty much do almost everything that Cobalion can do except for Calm Mind Sweep and Volt Switch. Like, they have the powerful physical moves, access to Stealth Rocks, you know, all that good stuff. And although Cobalion is good at the Volt Switch, I think that the combination actually of Crobat and Rotom-Mow works a lot better in that situation. So, you know, if there was anything I would change with this team, it would definitely be dropping Cobalion and getting something different. Don't get me wrong, like, I think Cobalion is good in the format, but I feel it doesn't help Mega Aggron at all as a Mega. I feel it doesn't really help Volcanion at all. I just feel it's a bit out of place in this team. But going off the positives, Volcanion is going to be so annoying to deal with for a lot of teams. Although it is quite slow, I think that it won't really matter if it can get in against the right Pokemon. For example, Crobat is going to bait in a lot of those bulky steel types, and maybe even some of the bulky ground types, which is going to allow Volcanion to come in and basically be like, yep, going to click Steam Eruption right now or Fire Blast and get off some major damage. It has access to a lot of really good moves. I think Dan's is the kind of guy where you can definitely find new and interesting ways to use Volcanion that maybe other people haven't really considered, that it's not just the whole slap a Choice Specs or an Assault Vest on this thing and just go for it, that he'll be definitely a lot more creative. And I think that's the thing with a lot of his team, is that it's that situation where, sure, he has things that are dedicated walls, like you look at, you know, your Mega Agrons, your Grambles, to an extent even Reuniclus, like it can be offensive, but you see it a lot defensive. But it's it's the level where they can be used incredibly as offensive things, but also really solidly as defense. Like Crocodile can be an amazing Choice Scarf Sweeper or Pursuit Trapper, but can also be a fantastic defensive wall and an electric immunity. Kangaskhan's alright. I think Kangaskhan is suited better to a team that has spikes. I've used Kangaskhan in the past in draft format, and It's like a budget Mega Lopunny. If you're going to use it, you're going to need a Pokemon that has spikes or toxic spikes in the field so you can consistently come in with that Silk Scarf Fake Out to get that chip damage time over time over time. I feel that, in this team it doesn't really fit. It's the same as Cobalion. Those two don't really fit with the team. I also feel like one of the major issues that I'm seeing with this team is it's a lot of physical attackers. I think, Volcanion, Reuniclus, and Rotom are the only really dedicated special attackers. Like Cobalion is more physical than special, I believe, and so I feel that not having that balance means that he's forced to bring at least two of those three every week, because you don't really see special attacking Hitmonlee or Crocodile or Haxorus. It's not going to happen for him. So I think that's going to make it easier for his opponents to be able to wall him to an extent. But I think that because he has such a depth of balance in his team, and Mega Aggron is such a really solid Pokemon, it's quite budget how much you got it for. But I put him second because I feel that he has a lot of threats that are incredibly hard to deal with, the major ones being the combination of Haxorus and Volcanion. I think those two together are actually going to be very, very solid. I think having that big wall breaker to bust down walls and then having a fantastic Dragon Dance Sweeper is going to be really good for him. He has a couple of really nice speed tiers in Unburden, Hitmonlee, and Crobat that he can use to his advantage, but he can also then flip the tables by having the Trick Room Reuniclus, which then makes a really low speed Volcanion a huge threat, as well as Mega Aggron in that regard. So I think because he has so many options on his team, I feel that puts him in a very high spot for me, in my opinion.
Oh, okay, I can definitely agree with that, to be fair.
I feel like I talk way too much when I do this shit, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like, when you just start talking and you don't realize that you haven't stopped for like a solid 10 minutes without taking a breath, and you're like, I should probably slow it down a little bit. But anyway, let's get to the home stretch here. The team that I have at number 1, you have at number 2. So tell me a bit about the St. Louis Reshiram.
Yeah, well, St. Louis Reshiram have a very solid team. Like you said, the top 2, it's time for the amazing teams in our opinions. And looking at this team at first sight, it's so scary. Holy shit. He's got all of his picks, in my opinion, even the lower priced picks, put in the quotation marks, because his lower priced mons are, I think, one of the most budget picks he can pick up. Like Excelgor for 6 points is an amazing spiker, amazing offensive, and amazing just lead in general. And to compare it together with his mons like Mega Gardevoir, Infernape, Dragonite, all of those offensive threats, his team is insanely hard hitting and insanely versatile, in my opinion. Having Slowbro, Druddigon is more defensive, but also can potentially be offensive, can potentially have tricky shenanigans up their sleeves. Being for Druddigon the sheer force set, like you previously mentioned, and for Slowbro being a Trick Room variant or Calm Mind or something along those lines. I think all of those mons that he has on his team are very versatile, can do different roles, and together they have, in my opinion, an amazing synergy, team synergy, and type synergy, and just offensive and defensive synergy. And I think that this team will actually put him pretty high up on the table next week again, if he manages to use them as I imagine him to be using them from this team, from this first side of the team, at least.
No, definitely. I think the only really weak-looking Pokemon in that entire squad is Shiftry. And it's just because, again, it's that thing we've been talking about this whole time, that 4 times weakness. I think compared to a Pokemon like Magnezone, where, yes, it has that 4 times weakness, but you factor in that he has, the Dragonite and a lot of very solid switch-ins to Ground-type Pokemon, that it's not too big of an issue. I think it is phenomenal. Obviously, I put it number 1. So, yeah. I think it is easily the most solid, balance, covered, beautiful team. But I think that, offensively speaking, just those first 3 Pokemon are scary enough. Like, you think Mega Gardevoir, what blocks that? Oh, a good Steel type. Oh, then bam, here's an Infernape to break through that. And, then chuck in a Dragonite for only 13 points. One of the best Dragon Dance sweepers in the entire game. Oh, you're still worried about those Steel types? Let's just trap them with Magnezone, bust through them with Donphan, and then have a decent solid defensive core being, Slowbro, Registeel, even chuck things like the defensive Infernape in there. People forget that Infernape can, flip both ways. He has a decent like Wish Passer actually in Mega Gardevoir. It's again a set that people really don't rate that highly, which they should, because Gardevoir has a decent HP stat when it Mega Evolves, and it actually has quite a nice little bit of bulk, and its typing is very, very strong. And then people forget also he has like a cheeky Gengar down in the middle there, which is a phenomenal attacker as well. A great spin blocker for him too, especially with the fact that he has all those hazards, being a Selgor, as well as I think, and I don't want to be quoted on this because I'm not 100%, I can't remember if Gengar gets access to Toxic Sparks or not. I feel like it should, but it doesn't. No. That's so disappointing.
Unfortunately, it does not.
I think the one I'm thinking about is Cofagrigus. Yeah, I apologize. But he has like Shiftry with the access to Defog, which means there's a bit of pressure off of Donphan, but Donphan's gonna be the main spinner, and that is the issue I kind of want to come to. Like, obviously, I think he has the best team, but it wouldn't really be a power ranking if we didn't dissect every single team properly. And the big issue for me is that I don't really see him bringing Shiftry a lot, like just in general. Like maybe as an offensive grass type, sure, but defensively, no way. Which means that he's basically depending on Donphan to be able to spin away. So if you go up against a team with a really solid, bulky ghost type, for example, your Cofagrigus, like say a Dust Noir, or just a really like a Sableye, for example, on the Sunkern team.
Yep.
It means that Donphan is limited with the way they can rapid speed, and that can be detrimental late game to say the Infernape, possibly breaking a potential Sash. It weakens things like Gardevoir, which are quite frail sometimes, depending on how you run it. And the big one is it breaks that Dragonite's multi-scale, and that thing is definitely his best late game cleaner on his team. And having that thing weakened is going to make it a little bit detrimental for him. Again, it's another Pokemon. He has, I think, 3 Pokemon with 3 times weaknesses. But I think the difference between his team and any other team with those weaknesses is he has so many ways to handle them compared to everybody else. I think that he's built in a way that he can cover those weaknesses as well as kind of capitalize on them. For example, a Pokemon with Hidden Power Ice is going to run into things like the Magnezone, the Slowbro, the Registeel, and the tables are going to kind of get turned. So I think it's a very good team. I think he will do the best this season with it. Whether he can back that up with his battling week 1, I'll have to wait and see. But definitely my pick to take the whole kit and caboodle. But
yeah,
obviously
I'm just gonna say one more thing about this team. Which you mentioned with Shiftry, I definitely agree. Shiftry is obviously not the best man on this team, but I do think, as you mentioned, versus a team like the Phoenix Sunkern with the Sableye, I think in that sort of situation he might run Shiftry just for that reason, just to not be weak to opposing spikes, opposing hazards. And other than that, it can just still be a very potent mixed attacker, sword stance user, which is, if an opponent doesn't prepare for it, doesn't have the best matchup against it, it can definitely pull through, and it can definitely be one of those win conditions that you just overlook, thinking they're probably not going to bring it. I think that might be kind of a secret victory, secret MVP again for the St. Louis Resonance.
I think it could be. I guess the reason why I was kind of giving it a bit of a bad rap was just because it's one of those situations, and it's one of the unfortunate things about when you draft a really, really balanced team, is you're going to have a lot of situations where you're going through the team building process and realizing it's not like, no matter how good it would be in a matchup, it might not be able to fit into the full team. Like, you're going for, say, like 2 to 3 walls, 3 big attackers to try and rip through an opponent's team, and you want to bring this Shifter because you know it can match up really well, but because, he has things like Gengar, Dragonite, Infernape, Mega Gardevoir, all these big attackers already, it just means that Shiftry has a lot of competition, so it's more, like you said, kind of finding that niche situation where Shiftry is going to come in clutch compared to a standard situation where, a Swords Dance Shiftry set is being compared to like a Swords Dance Infernape set where Infernape might be able to work it better. Yeah. So I'm not saying that he's not going to use Shiftry at all. I think you're right. He'll definitely find chances to use it. I just feel it's the weakest thing on his team because it's just like everything else has very solid roles, and its role is basically to either come as a life orb wall breaker or as like a fast defogger, and that's pretty much it. And it's only being brought if he doesn't want to bring Donphan, or if he wants to bring an offensive Donphan. Like that's all. But let's finish this thing off because I, for one, think I've been talking for too long. People in the comments will let me know. But
I'll keep it short. But
finish us off with a good old chat about Rob's team, because he loves that you put him at number 1. By the way, it was definitely feeding his ego.
I know, and I feel a bit sorry for it because now I feel it fed his ego, and he's gonna be even more praising himself even more than he already did. So, but unfortunately, his team is, in my opinion, the best. I am slightly biased again, like I was with GFC King. I know how these guys battle, and I know what style they prefer and how they use it, like you had with Cloud and the Jersey Doubles. And I know that Rob definitely loves the bulky offense, and this type synergy, he has all the standard cores: the Firewater Grass core, the Dragon Fairy Steel core, all of the scores, and they're all bulky offensive. And I think he, like I said, that's his playstyle. He knows how to use them. He can use them very well, and in my opinion, the Galvantula with the stick up is a decent addition to the team because it forces the opposition to actually prepare for the Galvantula, as bulky offense really prefers having the opposing team members slow down, the opposing side slow down, of course, because they don't have to take the hit and can be used even more in their roles. So I think that's the Galvantula is kind of the pickup that might actually save him in a lot of situations, and is that secret thing that might actually be overlooked. Maybe, I mean, Sticky Whip is not often the best form of hazards in the game, especially in League format. It's kind of overlooked more often than not. But I definitely like it. The only thing that I do agree with what you said is the ghost type. He does have a few options to get up different hazards, but he cannot block the ghost types unless he is in Greninja with Shadow Sneak or something. That's the only way he can potentially block a ghost attack. But the rapid spam will likely be an occurrence that will that he'll see happen a lot on his team, and he will maybe be forced to run or play more offensively with it. Then it's not necessarily a bad thing, of course, pressuring someone to spin, but more often than not, you obviously want to keep your stealth rocks or your other forms of hazards on the team. But yeah, I definitely like his team. He has all the forms of hazards with Greninja, with the spikes and T-spikes, and with the bulky offense, with everything basically gets recovery, everything gets a plethora of different moves, and the bulk and the speed. It's perfect combination in my opinion, and I think that Rob is gonna kick it very far again, like he did in the GPC season.
Yeah, definitely. I'm completely agree with you. I think it's just that situation again, like we said, and why a lot of our picks were a bit different was it's not that we feel that certain people are better than us. It's just that situation where, in our opinion, we look at different things. Like obviously, we look at different areas, and we all feel that each of these teams can do exceptionally well, and we want to be proven wrong from the lower teams. We want to see them do even better than we've expected, and we want to see these top teams we predicted be able to, show us that they can actually be the top teams. So obviously, like, Rob should be fine with it because he seems to have the ego for it, but we'll have to see if Maddie can, handle this high praise, because it's happened so many times in the past where teams have been touted to be so good and then it hasn't really worked out. But yeah, that's basically going to do it for us, guys. This is probably the longest power ranking video you'll see because it's us really talking in depth about each team's draft and whatnot, but in the future we're going to be focusing more on how they've battled and even maybe looking at the team building itself. So it should be a bit shorter. It might seem a bit longer because we have Parker as well, but trust me, it'll definitely be a bit shorter for you guys. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us today. As I said, technical issues. I don't really want to get into them because it's kind of embarrassing, but we'll move on from this. It won't happen again, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Anything you want to say before we finish this up?
I'm definitely interested in everyone's power rankings themselves, so if you want to have power rankings, if you disagree or agree with this, then let us know in the comments down below. And that's all for me.
Exactly. Definitely let us know in the comments below. If you have any questions for us, I'm sure they can tweet us. I don't know. Whatever works, or just in the comments below. It's whatever. We don't mind. But thank you guys for watching. We'll definitely be back next time with the week 1 power rankings.